Stop right there! I'm here from the future to tell you about the fact that I recorded this video before we got interactions. So now that we have the card interactions, I will put them at the end of the video. So just know that sometimes we talk about something which the interactions add something onto. I mean, there's not gonna be that much of that because this time around the interactions are not that interesting, but I still wanted to talk about them and we will talk about them at the end of the video. I should find a better reason why I use time machines. Well, it's been a while since I had the chance to cover the lore of Legends of Runeterra. Last time we did this was when Zolani was revealed, with Zolani being a very important character for this universe. And as we dive deeper and deeper into the Darkin saga, we are getting even more cards that reveal more interesting lore from this universe. However, I can't cover everything in one video. Nearly every new champion brings in something new. So yes, I am aware of the fact that Rise reveals some really cool, interesting historical events. We also got some new mounts. And I am definitely not making an MMO mounts video based on this card alone. But instead today we will focus on Aatrox and mainly Gale, because their cards revealed some characters which we already know from the lore. So let's dive right into it. Let's get all the Darkin cards out of the way before we get into the meaty part. First of all, even though I mentioned that today we will not talk about Rise, we have to talk about the Shard of Madness. In this card, Rise is looking into the past, and specifically he is showing us the moment the Darkin Wars began. The God Warriors of Shurima were thought peerless. Perfect. But years of war against an unstoppable foe eventually bowed their spirits, then broke them entirely. Zolani and Aatrox turned on each other, in a dispute that soon threatened Runeterra's very existence. Of course, now we know that Aatrox was the main general of the Darkin. A lot of the other Darkin were following his command, while Zolani was spreading blood magic among the Darkin so that she could force the Darkin to kneel in peace. But of course, we talked about this part in the last video. Anyway, with this information, let's then move on to Aatrox. Even across continents, Aatrox felt her awakening, how the hatred still burned. He had already broken her statues. Now he could wage a final war against the coward of Ikathia, and through destroying her, end this pitiful existence. This one raises some interesting questions. First of all, he is referencing the statue of Zolani, which he himself destroyed. But other than that, I wonder if Aatrox is referencing the fact that if he kills Zolani, the blood magic binding all the Darkin would stop affecting them. We're not entirely sure how blood magic works. We're not even necessarily sure if Zolani is the one who came up with blood magic. But we know that it's because of her that all the Darkin ended up bound in their weapons. That's the main reason Aatrox hates her. And in the leveled up version we can see an what if scenario. This is what would happen if Aatrox and Zolani actually met in battle. The battle gathered pace. Zolani had finally found the courage to face him, and as the two ancient enemies warred, the terrain itself began to wither and bend beneath their fury. An army of Celestials descended upon them, desperate to save their dying land. But it was too late. Aatrox would have his day. He would find his peace. Of course, as you can see, their battle was interrupted by Gale. Hence the reason why we are talking about Aatrox in the first place. We all know that the aspects only descend from the heavens when a great threat is destroying the world. Sometimes it is the Watchers, sometimes it is the Void, but in this case it is the Darkin who are destroying entire regions. In fact, the Darkin War originally ended when the aspect of Twilight intervened. Now very quickly we can also mention the other revealed Darkin. There is the Darkin Fan, which is an artifact that Shen interacted with. In the bridge between worlds, I have long sensed a shadow that pulses with silent rage, though I know better than to delve into the darkness after it. The pulses had lately grown stronger, and I fear the creatures of the spirit realm will soon begin searching for it. A quote from Shen. Of course, this Darkin fan held Pra, the Breachwalker. His general call stirred him from slumber. As his senses came to him, Pra found himself looking through a weighted veil to a lush, unfamiliar land. Slowly, inexorably, he stepped through the divide and buried his feet in Runeterra's soil once more. And in the art, we can see what it looked like when Pra walked into Ionia. We then also have the Darkin Staff, which was hidden in the Bandlewoods. The Bandlewood seemed a perfect place to hide a Darkin weapon, they reasoned. Bandlewoods are by their very nature impossible to navigate, and the Yordles would know to steer clear of such abject malevolence. But the Targonians failed to realize the efficacy of such strange magic, and the effects it would have over the local flora. So yes, it was the Targonians who hid the staff in the Bandlewoods, thinking it would be safely stored there. But now we know that as the Darkin magic seeped out, it took a piece of Bandle City with it. And that's how Balkax was released. Balkax felt the tree's limbs grip the staff inside which he lay dormant. Quickly he gripped back. His life erupted from the Darkin staff and coursed through the tree's ancient boughs and branches. There was no heart to control here, no blood to bend. Balkax could finally return to his general and atone for his past transgressions. This is very interesting because for the first time we can see a Darkin take over something which doesn't really have a physical body with blood. But because the tree he took over was from the Bandlewoods, which is nothing but spiritual magic, the side effects were insane. And lastly, there is also the Darkin Spear. Warmother, the grip of winter has tightened. The Avarosans have felt beyond their outposts. North is the sea. Our only path leads east. Do not listen to him, Warmother. That way is the Pale, and beyond it, the Whispering Wilds. I say better to die than face that cursed land. How fortunate for you both that neither must decide my people's fate. True, Warmother, but perhaps there is a third way. Let me travel east. Better a scout is lost to darkness than all of our people. So here we learn that the Darkin Spear is in the Freljord, and it is close to where Sejuani is leading the Winter's Claw. And here I assume we got another what-if scenario. We are not sure if this canonically happened yet, but it seems like one of Sejuani's scouts was sent out to find a Darkin artifact which would release Anaka. At least I assume that's how it's pronounced. With newfound vigor, the great warrior Anaka sped south through the Freljord and into the Demacian lands. The outposts prepared as best as they could to repel her assault, but no mere mortal would stand between Anaka's fury and the coward who stoked it. Now, while these were all the new Darkin, we also got a new updated Zolani. This is a separate card for Zolani, sort of how Cythria has multiple cards, which tells us what would happen in this battle between Aatrox and Zolani. Zolani watched on as Anaka fell to his knees, subjugated by the very enemy he sought so desperately to destroy. Slowly the beat of his heart rang out in unison with the others. Another heart to control, another body to command. As you can see, what Zolani is really doing during the Darkin Wars is that she is absorbing all the other Darkin. Now in the art you can see that while Aatrox was distracted by Gale, Zolani is absorbing the other Darkin. And should she absorb enough of the Darkin blood magic, she would be turned into Zolani, Aspect's Bane, which is her ultimate final form. More. Even the great hero of legend Mihira could not withstand Zolani's overwhelming strength. The earth seemed to shudder to one beat now. Such was the harmonic power growing within Zolani. She took a moment to observe the battlefield, and wept with the joy filling her soul. Soon the world would be united in peace, in love, in silence. Now, I have to say, I love this one so much. This maddening form basically shows us what the ultimate Darkin looks like. However, the description mentioned something extremely important. Once again, you can see that in this what-if scenario, she is fighting Kale. But the description mentioned that even the great hero of legend, Mihira, could not withstand Zolani's overwhelming strength. So this is what Zolani looks like after she absorbed Mihira. Now, some of you may remember the name Mihira, because Mihira is the mother of Kale and Morgana. Yes, I have seen all the memes, so let's break it down. Originally, Mihira was a Targonian. While she was pregnant, the Targonian tribes went to war. And to escape all the destruction as a last resort, together with her husband, they fled to the peak of Mount Targon. There they sought salvation, which came in the form of Mihira becoming the aspect of justice. Which means that yes, Mihira was happy with 2 children before she became this. Anyway, after this, her 2 twin daughters were born, and Mihira kept attending to the duties of the aspect of justice. Which means that constantly she had to fly away from her family to kill some existential threats. And over time, as she became more and more powerful, even her own husband began to fear her. And because it wasn't really a good idea to raise 2 daughters near that, one night he took them both and they sneakily ran away into the lands of Demacia, which were said to be covered in the magical woods that absorbed magic. That's how Kale and Morgana got to Demacia. Originally, they were all Targonians. And here comes the interesting part. In the story, it was never directly said that Mihira died. All we learned is that one day her blade split in 2 and it fell before Kale and Morgana. And that's how the 2 became the twin aspects of justice. And then the rest of the story happened. They each had different views on what justice really was, and it ended up with Morgana giving up on that blade, so Kale later picked it up. Anyway, the point of all of this is that while the entire time we thought that Kale and Morgana became aspects because Mihira died, and they inherited her powers, well, here we learned that Mihira has to be alive. Now, to be fair, the story had always said that Mihira was alive, and there were only hints at the fact that perhaps Kale would find her dead, and that's why they got her blade. Like here, where the story mentioned that surely, wink wink, this was a hint that she yet lived. Well, in the end, yep, Mihira was simply alive. And Kale was absent from Demacia because she was searching for her guidance in the celestial realms. And now that we have a proof that she's alive, it makes me wonder, did Mihira give up on her powers and she gave them to her daughters? Well, not necessarily, because all of her cards reveal something cool. So let's start with Mihira herself. Some revere the aspects as gods, others see them as messengers from the realm beyond. Still others fear them, and perhaps rightly so. A quote from lorekeeper Skyen. And yes, this is where it is believed that TB Skyen became a canonical part of the universe, where he serves as a Targonian lorekeeper. One thing to quickly point out here. First of all, yes, let's all make jokes about biblically accurate angels, but more importantly, it's cool that Mihira has the 6 wings, just like Ascended Kale. But more importantly, look at all the servants around her. That's all the birdie angels. But also, look where they are flying from. They are flying from all these runes and these openings in the mountain, which are not even necessarily openings. It's all just strange and weird, and that's for one simple reason. It is all explained in the Seraphic Wyvern. Ah, I see it now. The shapes left in the mountain were merely imprints, conduits for the beings from the realm beyond the stars. A quote from lorekeeper Skyen. Yes, as was explained here, all those weird shapes in the sides of Mount Targon are basically gateways for the angelic beings from the realms beyond. Riot always told us that there is a reason why Targon has these weird shapes, but finally we learned what it's all about. It is all a way for the Targonian aspects to quickly summon their servants onto Runeterra. We then have the winged messengers. These ones have a quote from Rise. "Yes, I recognize you. The message you bear, it can only be a summons." This is one of the tiny beings that we saw around Mihira. And behind it we can see some of the bigger angelic beings, which are Lawkeepers. I fear the day has finally come. Justice returns on golden wings. And with her she brings a shining army. Now, there is one more thing that I can quickly mention here. It was confirmed by Riot that none of these beings are separate beings. They are all an extension of Mihira's will. So while these are servants of the aspect of justice, it is all more like a hive mind. We then also have the Divine Clerk. And I wonder if one of these is who Lorekeeper Skyen is. It is said that when Mihira left this place, she left a part of her behind, a holy flame burning brightly. For years my family had tended to that fire, keeping it lit in the hopes that she may yet return. And this is probably the key part of the story. The reason why we can see Mihira in that giant portal is because, just like all the other angelic beings, she probably just transferred in. Which likely means that the entire time she was in the celestial realms. But while she was in the celestial realms doing whatever there, she most likely needed someone to enforce justice while she was gone. And so, I suspect that's the reason why Kael and Morgana were chosen to succeed her. It's probably not that Kael and Morgana became the aspects of justice, at least not with all of its power, but they were chosen to represent Mihira on Runeterra while she was gone. All of this is still just theories, so absolutely feel free to chip in what you think, but right now, that's what it looks like. Because other than that, I don't really know why Kael and Morgana should become the aspects of justice, while Mihira is still alive. And yes, by the way, we should also mention that the reason why Zolani looks so weird is because with all the wings around her, it is obvious she is mimicking the appearance of Mihira. That's why she looks so powerful here. But lastly, let's end this video with the card of Kael herself. The Demacians know her as the Winged Protector, but those of us who live under the Vault of Stars in Targon know her as the Daughter of Justice, bearing divine purpose and a sword of starfire. Once again, a quote from Lorekeeper Skyen, which continues in level 2. "We would surely know her to see her, should she ever return, but I worry there is little reason for her to do so beyond the threat so dire that it requires her interference." Once again, as we learned in the past, for example with the Darkin Wars, the aspects only ever interfere when Runeterra itself is in danger. And now, as I promised, let's also chip in the interactions. First of all, it is cool that we got some interesting new info about Aatrox, because Aatrox is being called the Blade of Icathia.
The Blade of Icathia has dulled, we see.
No matter, it will take only a single swing to fell you.
Aatrox is also an Icathian. Also, I know it is supposed to be pronounced Icathia, but after 10 years, there is no way I am relearning that. Also, it is interesting to see that even Aatrox is curious about what actually happened to Balkax.
Two great powers somehow spliced together.
Now, even though, again, we will talk about Rise next time, there is one interaction which we have to mention now. There is one where Kael calls him an old friend.
Are you and I the only ones standing up to this madness?
Who else can, old friend?
And this is something I believe had never been referenced in the lore before. So to see them suddenly be good friends is peculiar. Because the entire time, Kael was somewhere in the Celestial Realms. So when did they have time for this? Then we also have Mihira's interactions, which also straight up dive into the fact that she was simply gone.
They have suffered long absent my care.
All I have done in your name.
But she never states why she was gone. But at least she does have one interaction that mentions that she had fully given her blade to Kael.
I bear your sword and a noble purpose. 'Tis thy blade now, dear one. Wield it justly.
But yet again, she never mentioned the reason she gave up on her own weapon. And unfortunately, that is it for the interesting interactions. We didn't really get too many this time around. So now, let's finish the video. But that is all the cards regarding the Darkins and Mihira. As you probably saw, I really wanted to cover these cards because Mihira is simply a very important character in this universe. It is one of the most powerful beings on Runeterra, which originates from mortals. So I hope I was able to bring some memories back, because it has been a while since we have covered the core lore of Targon and Demacia. But more importantly, I hope I was able to clear that topic. Don't worry, their father was not a kinky man.